Well, good morning, everybody. Jeff Slakey and Spencer Hughes, continuing on with our candidate conversations in the 35th Legislative District for the great state of Washington. We're talking with all the candidates that are running for both positions 1 and 2. And right now we have the incumbent in position 2. It's Representative Drew MacEwen. Good morning, Drew.
Good morning, Jeff. Thanks for having me.
Of course, and good to have these candidate conversations as we move through with the ballots in the hands of many across Mason County and all of the 35th. The top two vote getters in the primary will move on in this race. There are 3 people running for the position in position 2. So we're going to start here with this conversation with Representative MacEwen. For those who may not be aware, tell us a little bit about your background and your time in the State House thus far.
Sure. Well, again, I appreciate the opportunity. Grew up in the upper Midwest, went into the Navy's nuclear propulsion program, and that is what brought me out here in the mid-'90s. Served in the submarine force out of Bangor, Washington, and just fell in love with the area and stayed here. In 2012, a number of community leaders asked me to run for the House. And was fortunate enough to get elected, and I've been in there since then. And just absolutely appreciate the opportunity. It's very humbling to serve the constituents of the 35th district. And the things I ran on in 2012 are still true today. And that's to ensure we have a world-class K-12 education for our students, and that they have every opportunity to succeed in life, whatever path they may choose. That we have a strong economy, and whether somebody chooses to operate their own business or be an employee or work for one of our government agencies at the state or local level, that we have an economy that's strong and vibrant, that again creates that opportunity for people to succeed. And then finally is making sure that state government's accountable. We spend $54 billion of your taxpayer dollars, and we need to make sure that we're doing that in the most efficient and productive manner.
Let's talk about the start of the next school year here as we're starting to get plans in and starting to hear a little bit more and more from the North Mason School District and the Shelton School District, other districts around the 35th. What concerns do you have with school into the fall, and what are some of the ways that the state, the legislature can help the local school districts be ready to go, however it looks in September?
Well, I think the biggest thing we can do as the legislature is listen. You look at districts across our state and across the 35th district. You're going to have a lot of school districts trying some different things, and unfortunately, probably a lot of them aren't going to work, but some of them are going to work. And I think we just got to step back and give that flexibility to local districts to best determine how things are going to work out. This is a tough environment, and it's not going to take much to derail it. So we need to hold back the criticism of given, because a lot of districts, it's just not going to work out real well. And we've got to allow the latitude for them to be able to adapt and pivot and see what is working. And there might be a district somewhere else in the state that figures out something unique that'll be the blueprint for everybody. So we just got to listen, be able and willing to provide the resources that may be needed. I think it's rather presumptuous for the state legislature right now to assume that we know best how to operate school districts during this environment. This is a changing, evolving thing from one day to the next. And again, flexibility is key. We all want kids to be back in school, but we certainly want them to be safe and healthy as well as the staff that is there. And it's not going to take much to shut that down. So I'm all for about the flexibility and listening to what the needs are and seeing how we can best meet those needs.
You've worked hard in your time in the State House of Representatives, working your way up the ladder in the Republican caucus. What more do you have to do? What more thoughts and ideas do you have to push forth through state government?
Yeah, one of the biggest things I've been working on since I was first elected is comprehensive B&O tax reform. That's taxes on our businesses. It's a system that you can be paying taxes and not be making money and still owe taxes to the state. And that's a tough system to operate under, and you look at the statistics that are out there and the number of businesses that fail in the first 2 years just because of, other things that are there. Well, then you add in this tax bill that you potentially owe when you're not making money, and it exacerbates those numbers in our state. And I firmly believe that we can fundamentally reform the B&O tax system in this state, and at the same time not have a negative impact on the budget. One of the proposals I've had would actually exempt probably 85% of the businesses in our state, but have a zero impact on the state budget. So that's still a big thing for me. I think anything we can do, again, that goes back to having that strong economy. We also need to continue to look at reforms, and I'm pleased to have the legislation signed into law that was passed on a bipartisan basis that did some reforms to labor and industries. Very proud of that. We've cut red tape in the VA system and expanded the benefit pool there. There's things that we can always be doing. We've always got to be looking for how best to be trustees of the state taxpayer dollars.
In the last session, the Republican caucus was in the minority party. If that continues through this next session, how best will you work with the majority party there, the Democrats, and what are you worried about when it comes to this upcoming session? As we've seen, record numbers of high unemployment. We've seen record numbers of decline in revenue across the state and locally. Are there any things that you're worried about moving forward in the session that may look to raise funds or things like that?
Well, yes, to answer your question, I mean, we're facing roughly an $8 billion shortfall over the next 4 years. I'm hoping that we can continue to get this economy churning again and close that gap somewhat. But the reality is that the other side of the aisle has routinely called for an income tax in one form or another, and I'm fearful that they're going to take this opportunity with the COVID crisis to do that. And I think it's the worst thing you can do is to raise taxes in an economic downturn when people are already suffering. I've spoken on the House floor for the last couple of years against the budget that was being put forward, and that we weren't setting enough money aside. We've got to fundamentally restructure how we do the budget in this state. I'm the assistant ranking member on appropriations, been there since my second term in office, and that continues to be a voice that I bring to that, and that my side of the aisle continuously puts forward, is that we've got to set more aside for when things like this happen. Certainly, a year ago, nobody saw COVID as being the thing that would kick the economy down, but we knew we were late in the cycle, that we were due for an economic downturn. But yet the budgets put forth by the majority party, by the Democrat Party, continued to spend every last dime. On a $54 billion budget, they had $100 million set aside as their ending fund balance. That's the same as somebody making $100,000 a year, leaving $250 in their savings account for an emergency. It's not going to get you very far. But that's the position the state put itself in. So I'm going to continue to speak loudly, and for the people of this district, that you can't balance this budget on the backs of them when they're already in economic hardship. So we've got to bring that voice to it and continue to restructure how we budget in this state.
This might be a little in the weeds question, but I think it kind of would be a fascinating one to find out what sort of in-house House of Representative changes would you look like to make if you have the opportunity? I know you've advocated in the past for holding back on the revenue forecasts until we get some of these numbers and the budget cycles like that. Are there any in-house things that happen that you would look to change in the upcoming session?
I would love to go to a zero-based budgeting process. And that is, right now, like most government agencies, the budget is built on what the last budget was. And I think that's a horrible way to do it. I think you should start at zero and build up based on what the needs are. And you don't need to change state law to do that. We can do that as an institution. I think that'd be a fantastic way to go about it. And yes, I advocated for moving up our economic forecast to avoid special sessions. And we've actually, and I'm proud of that we've actually done that in the first quarter of the year. We now take that economic forecast in February instead of March to help get us done on time. So, that's something I've brought to the chamber that's finally been heard, and that's a positive. But again, I think we need to take it a step further and let's go to a zero-based budgeting process.
What do you think the voters are going to be really trying to internalize as they get ready to mark their names on their ballots this year? I mean, obviously COVID and the response or how we're going to move forward, but some of these economic issues, this is a unique election, to be sure.
It is. And I think that what's going on right now has turned a lot of conventional wisdom on its head. And, as I talk to voters and my constituents, here's what's abundantly clear. People are hurting. And we've got to be cognizant of that. There's either economic hardship, there's health hardship, and God forbid that there's both of those put together for some people. But that's the reality that's out there right now. And we've got to be sensitive to that and understand that the actions taken in Olympia have a direct impact on the daily lives of our constituents. And, it's one of the things that as a business owner in the community that I bring to the table is that I've got to live with the consequences of what happens in Olympia immediately. And I see that on a day-to-day basis. So, I feel and I hear what my constituents are saying, and we've got to take their voice and take that to Olympia and say, hey, this is reality in the day-to-day life of people. And with every vote we take, need to be cognizant of that. So I think a lot of people are going to be voting with with their heart in that regard. In that we're in a tough situation right now. I think I've got the leadership over the last 8 years to prove that we can get things done, and I'll work on both sides of the aisle, whether I'm in the majority or the minority, because I don't think either party has a monopoly on good ideas. Obviously, I think my side's got some better ideas, but I'm happy to work with both sides of the aisle, and I always have, and I'm proud of that bipartisan track record.
And then one more on this COVID and just politicking in general. I mean, obviously, we're doing this over Zoom. We have been in studio over the years together, but this has changed the way you have had to get out and be in front of folks. Has it made it easier in a sense that you can schedule these types of meetings with community groups better? Because I know there's a lot of travel between the different organizations that want to talk with you about your upcoming priorities. Right. But just how has this been for you?
It's been different. On one hand, it's nice because you can do these types of conversations, and they're easy to put together. It doesn't take a lot of resources to do. On the flip side, it's too easy to do a lot of these, and so it becomes you get a lot of these types of processes with various organizations. But that is part of the whole campaign and the whole political process. And so it is nicer from the standpoint I don't have to drive all over, and I can do this from my office or my home. And that's fun. But I miss being out there with people, and I think people are more candid with you when you can have more of a one-on-one conversation. Even though you and I are right now, it doesn't maybe feel like that to folks sometimes. And so, that's something that's missed. So, phone calls are important, and it's tough to call all 140,000 people that live in the 35th district. But you work through that, and try to make calls here and there, and call voters and ask what's on their mind. And I think that's an important aspect, especially in the environment we're in today.
Drew MacEwen is running once again for the second position in the 35th district for the great state of Washington. You can find out more about him on his websites, and we'll put the links to that in the show notes here for our candidate conversations. The ballots are out now, so make sure you get those in by 8 p.m. on August 4th. More of these candidate conversations continuing, but thank you so much for spending some time with me this morning, Drew. Good to see you.
Yeah, likewise, Jeff. Thank you very much. And I would just a tidbit to listeners is because every campaign, every political party does this, and that is to chase voters who haven't voted yet. So if you want to get rid of the phone calls and the mail, put your ballot in today. And because we can see who's voted, you can't see how they voted, but we can tell who's voted, and you cross them off the list, and they don't get contacted anymore. So if you get tired of seeing stuff, vote sooner, and then it's done. So
well, that's a great piece of advice for sure. Drew MacEwen, current 35th district representative in position 2, running for re-election this year. Thanks, Drew.
Thank you, Jeff. Have a great morning.